All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to This Week in Mormons, the Sisters Edition, with your hosts, Ariane Smith
and Tiffany Hales.
Here for our June podcast.
Yes.
Hopefully listeners listened last week. We had the International Bros.
We did. We had
the Daniels.
They called themselves the two Daniels.
They were really good. That was so fun to hear from like a different perspective. They're from both from Chile but living. I think one's living in England right now. One's living here.
And one's living in America.
America for the time being. But it was really fun to hear their international perspective.
Oh, well, and not only that, it was fun to hear their accent.
Yes.
It was TWIM with an accent.
Yes.
So I really liked it. I believe that they are going to come back. I really enjoyed them. I think they are a great addition here to TWIM.
Yeah. And then on a programming note, we need to add, you are going to be doing twice a month now.
I am. I talked about that. I think a little bit. I can't remember if I talked a little bit about it with Holly, but you and I will podcast once a month. And then I am going to have a guest host on with me. I had my friend Holly earlier this month. And in July, I'm super excited about who I got in July.
She got someone really fun.
So as you know, we have covered a lot of stories from Hannah Syriac. And she is a reporter for the Deseret News. Mm-hmm. And I twisted her arm and promised to be really nice to her. And she agreed to come on the podcast with me. So I'm going to do a little bit of an interview with her so that we kind of get to know her a little bit first. And then we will delve into a few stories. She agreed to that format. So I'm doing that. I think the first weekend in July is when we're going to do that. Yeah, July 7th or 8th. All right, somewhere in there. Yeah. Hannah and I will record.
Super excited to listen. I love listening when you do it with Holly. It's kind of a treat for me. Tiffany stepped up to the plate because I am just not in a place in my life where I can handle more, but I love doing it once a month. So she stepped it up and she said, I can do it more than once a month. And it is such a treat for me because I get to just sit back and listen.
Oh, you're so sweet. Fun. Well, and then that reminds me, I also want to put it out there into the universe. Any of you TWIM listeners, if you would like to come on with me, we can arrange something. I will run all the technical stuff. All you have to do is read some articles and come on and talk to me. And so anybody out there who might be interested in coming on once a month with me as my other co-host, other than my delightful sister, Ariane, just reach out at contact@thisweekinmormons and let us contact@thisweekinmormons.com.
Yes.
And let us know and we'll reach out.
It'll be so fun. Okay.
I have one more thing to say before we move on. I just realized, for those of you who are watching on video, the dress I'm wearing tonight, because this is a t-shirt dress, is the same dress I wore 2 weeks ago when I recorded with Holly.
For shame.
I know. I really do own more than one dress, as you know, because my closet's bigger than one of my child's bedrooms. But apparently this must be a Friday favorite because I had several things going on today, and I was looking when I was getting dressed about what will satisfy all my requirements for today, and I put this on, and apparently I made
that you're doing twice a month, you're going to have to keep a wardrobe log.
I know. Apparently I had the same conversation with myself 2 weeks ago when it was Friday and we were recording. Okay, now we can move on to summer stuff.
Okay. First, before we hit the articles, we have to have a little discussion, because we do this every year.
Yes, we do.
About youth summer festivities within the church. Yes. Summer camps, youth conferences, treks, girls camps, etc., etc.
Exactly.
So here's my update.
And we're in the thick of it right now. You're in the thick of it. I'm in the thick of it.
She's leaving for girls camp in a couple days. My kids are on track.
We got a lot to say about this.
My kids are on track.
Your kids are on track. Now, this is ward trek.
This is ward trek.
Not stake trek.
Not stake
and
trek.
It's just ward trek with your kids, not with other family members.
Yes.
Like sometimes wards will do it as families.
No, this is
just kids.
The young men, young women, ward trek. Okay. So we've talked a lot about trek over the years.
Yes.
If you've listened, you know I have strong feelings, like weird feelings. Anyway, this was my beef with trek this year.
Let me pause you. How many kids? How many kids in your ward?
In my ward, I think there were about 45 kids going on this trek.
Okay.
But they lost a few. So it might be closer to 40.
Okay.
There were a few last minute.
And probably 10, 12 leaders?
Yeah. So I think they have 5 families.
Okay.
They divided those 40 kids into
5 families.
With, ma's and pa's and the whole deal. So,
okay.
I've been trying to have a really positive attitude because I have 2 teenage girls going this year. They
Okay.
did this 3 years ago, and I
you
had
just have
one
one.
teenage girl.
That's
Now
right.
I have 2. The one who'd been on it before was very excited. The younger one, who's 13, was not excited. She's been saying 4 months, I'm not going. I am not going. And here's the thing. Had there been girls' camp this summer, I might have let her stay home.
Okay.
But this is why I was like,
So why were you beefing?
This is why I was beefing, because they canceled girls' camp.
Which I think is ridiculous.
I'm okay with a trek if you people want to trek. It's not my jam, but some people love it.
Yeah.
I can accept that. I can get on board, but not when you take away my girls' camp. I feel like I just have such strong feelings about girls' camp and just how good it is to get those girls away from the boys and the bonding. And they haven't had a lot of girls' camp because of COVID.
Yeah.
Like my oldest is 16. I think she's been to girls' camp twice.
Well, they do FSY last year, so they didn't do girls' camp because they did FSY?
They did girls' camp on an FSY year.
Okay.
And they do youth conference. Our stake does youth conference every single year that is not an FSY year.
Okay.
So they're always getting a chance to be with the boys.
Okay.
At stake youth conference or FSY. So it's not like they never get a chance to be with the boys. So that's just why girls' camp is like super precious to me. Like, I just see so much value in it.
Well, and your 13-year-old, has she even been to girls' camp?
She's been to one girls' camp.
Okay, so she went last year.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but this is super interesting. I will say that my ward is trying to modify Trek. They're trying to make it more user-friendly, which I appreciate. I don't know. Some people love Trek. I am just of the mindset that our ancestors are looking at us from the other side being like, y'all are crazy. Like, why are you
cosplaying that? But okay. It makes you feel good.
But here are some of the modifications that they did. I think they've done like a really good, I got to give credit to our ward Trek leaders.
Okay, so tell me what the modifications are.
Biggest modification they did was no Pioneer clothes are not required.
That's huge.
Now, for the boys,
that's part of cosplay.
For the boys, this changed nothing.
Yeah, duh.
Because even though Pioneer clothes are not required, the place they're going, they decide to take the kids to Washington. It's about 4 hours away, and it's a church-owned property where they provide you hand carts, they provide you porta potties. You have to bring your own cook and your own food and your own equipment, but they provide you the hand carts, the porta potties, and the trail.
Okay.
So there you go.
Okay.
So part of their rules, since it's a church-owned facility, is you must wear long pants and long sleeves and not leggings. They have to be like
a baggy pant,
non-legging pant. Now, as you can imagine, my teenage girls were not happy.
Ooh.
Now, I did keep trying to remind them.
I'm guessing there was murmuring.
You could be in full Pioneer garb.
True.
So count your blessings. This is actually better. There was much murmuring in my house. So,
okay. So here's my question. So is this, I mean, the church owns a number of different camp facilities. And, we have a handbook, and the handbook does not specify what dress code is for church camp facilities. So who's making the rules about what the dress code is for every facility?
I don't know. I think this is like whatever senior missionaries have been running it. I don't know. I don't know.
Because I'm headed up to a church camp this week. And to my knowledge, I've never been aware that there is a dress code for this particular facility.
Right.
But
we went to our ward girls camp last year, went to a church-owned facility in Donnelly.
Okay.
And they had a dress code.
Really?
They were told not to wear, I believe they were told not to wear two like bikinis, which nobody listened to. And I believe they were also told not to wear short shorts. And the leaders said, "Oh, it's a church facility. These are not our rules. This is the church." So I think maybe it's like whatever senior couple is there running it. I don't know.
Interesting.
I don't know. Anyway.
So back to I'm sorry. I had to digress because I'm just very curious about this.
There's much murmuring in my house.
Okay.
I'm torn between, because my oldest daughter really wanted to wear leggings. That's what she exercises. That's what I exercise in. And I was honestly like, well, I can't blame you, because if I were going on a hike, I would wear leggings. And
you want to wear comfortable clothes that's easy to move.
Your legs. This is what she said to me. She did not get this from me. I swear. I was thinking it in my head, but I did not say it.
Okay.
She goes, Mom, it's just because they don't want the boys to see us in tight pants. I was dying inside. I was like, I can't.
Well, she's probably not wrong.
I can't say she's wrong, but I'm also trying to be like supportive and like trying to encourage a good attitude. Anyway, so this is the other hilarious thing. She has a knee injury, so she knew.
Now this is the 16-year-old. This
is my oldest. She had a surgery. She had a knee injury, so she knew going into this she was going to spend a significant time on the four-wheeler.
Yes,
and icing her knee and having it wrapped.
Yes,
she can walk. She just can't walk far. So she the night before started whining about shorts. Like, well, I need to wear shorts so I can wrap my knee and ice my knee and all the things. And I'm like. And she's like, I'm taking my legs. She's just like making all these threats. And I was like, you can do what you want. I said, I mean, you can certainly try, but I said, but you need to be prepared to change if they ask you to change, because.
Okay. I like how you approach this. Our mother would have handled this completely differently. She would have done a whole inspection of it. Well, first of all, we wouldn't have even been allowed to have the shorts. Second, she would have done a whole inspection of our bag to make sure there was no contraband in there. And she would have flat out said, you're not wearing shorts. I like how you said you could do what you want, but just be prepared for consequences.
So I told her, I said, you're probably not going to get away with wearing your shorts.
Okay.
But I said, they might not say anything if you wear your leggings. I don't know, but you have to be prepared to change in case. So
I think that's very good advice.
So we're in the car driving to the church.
Okay.
And I'm going through the list. It's like 7 a.m. With both girls. I'm like, okay. I'm like, did you remember your sunscreen? Did you remember this? So I turned to my oldest and I said, did you remember to pack some shorts to sleep in? Because the list said, this was how they phrased the list.
Gosh.
This is their way of saying don't wear booty shorts without saying don't wear shorts. They said pack pajamas, and then they said basketball shorts are appropriate, or basketball shorts are great, which implies, the longer. Yeah. Anyway, so I'm going through the checklist. I said, did you remember to pack your shorts for your pajamas? Because both my girls wear shorts to bed. And she goes, I packed my shortest ones I own. I was dying. And then
our mother is rolling over in her grave.
And then I've been seeing pictures coming in from Trek.
So how are you getting the pictures from Trek?
Well, I'm friends with the Trek leader that planned the whole thing.
Okay.
And so she's posting some on her Instagram.
Okay.
And then one of my other friends, her husband is up there. And so he's sending back pictures that she's passing on to all the moms.
Okay. So you're getting photography,
and she is full blown in her shorts,
in her shorty shorts.
Day one, I'm like, oh my gosh! And then I'm like, 13-year-old little sister is not going to stand for this. And so, sure enough, by the end, I think she wore her pants all day, from what I could tell from the pictures. And then by the end, when they parked their handcarts for the night, boom, she was in her little shorts. Oh my gosh. I'm sure these leaders are just in a conundrum as to, do we say something? Do we not say something?
Exactly.
Anyway, it just makes me laugh so hard because I never would have dared as a young woman. I was so obedient.
Yeah.
Like I never would have considered breaking a rule ever. I'm like, where did these girls come from? But also, I do have to say that I have been on the young women leader end of it.
Yes.
For years. I spent many years in young women.
Yes.
Before I had teenage girls. And I very specifically remember having conversations like this, like about activities, about specific girls that would come wearing tank tops. And this is like 15 years ago, when we lived in an era where for strength of youth was very much. It was talked about,
black and white.
It was hit on, and it was you were constantly reviewing the standards and strength of youth, constantly having firesides about the strength of youth standards. And I remember having specific discussions about a particular girl that wore tank tops to young women's activities, and the leaders all sitting around a table discussing like, well, how do we handle this? What do we do? Do we say something? Do we not say something? And I remember at the time being able to, I remember at the time being able to see both sides, like, oh, this
Mhm.
is a conundrum. And I do remember one other leader piping up and being like, I think we should just be lucky that she's
here.
there.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I have to say now that my perspective has 100%.
Now that you have those two teenage daughters.
Complete 180. Now that I have those two teenage daughters, I am like, no, it is all we can do to get their little butts in the seats at church and at Mutual. What they're wearing is the least of our concerns. We need to be just so focused on getting them there and getting them to want to have a relationship with the Savior and Heavenly Father.
Exactly. Pick your battles.
Yeah.
Don't make hemlines be one of them.
So I don't know. I've done a complete turnaround on my perspective now that I'm a mother of teen girls.
So, all right. Well, let me tell you about my youth activity. Girls Camp starts on Monday.
Mm-hmm.
I am not going as the leader. My husband and I were asked to cook for Girls Camp. And this is Ward Girls Camp. It is not Stake Girls Camp. So we have 24 girls plus adults that we're cooking for. And so I want to share with you all, A, my menu, and B, some pro tips if you ever get called to cook for Girls Camp. Because you need some pro tips. So first of all, for pro tips, Mel's Kitchen Cafe.
Yes.
She is a food blogger that we have talked about a lot, and she is a member of the church. I think it was approximately March. She did a whole blog post on cooking for Girls Camp because last summer she got called to cook for Girls Camp, but it was Stake Girls Camp, not Ward Girls Camp. So she was cooking for between 270 and 290 people. And so if you get called to cook for Stake Girls Camp, go to her blog post, find it, and she gives you her menu, she gives you her recipes, she goes through a calendar and she says you need this many people on your committee, you need to start doing this at this particular time, and she has it like super well organized for if you are cooking for an exceptionally large crowd. So my crowd is a bit smaller. However, where she went to Girls Camp, they actually had a kitchen to cook in. I do not have a kitchen to cook in.
That's a different ballgame.
The girls are tent camping. I'm driving my RV up there because as the cook, I feel no obligation to have to sleep in a tent.
No.
And so we're going to it's a church site that's a tent camping site. It does have a covered pavilion. It does have a flat top grill that's outside in the covered pavilion. It's got a couple refrigerators with freezers, running water, and porta potties. Okay. So that's the extent of the amenities that I have to deal with.
Okay.
So what I am trying to do is I am trying to pre-cook as much as I can as possible. So, and my husband's going up there with me. I can't remember if I said that he's cooking with me too. So that essentially we are just almost reheating everything. So here's our menu. So we get there, the girls leave in the morning. Our first meal is lunch, and we're just going to do hot dogs and chips and watermelon because that's really easy to throw on the grill. For their snack that afternoon, they are having a salted caramel Rice Krispie bar.
I love those.
And then for dinner that night, we are doing Cafe Rio pork salad plus chips and salsa. So I pre-made my pork, I pre-made my rice, and then it'll just be a matter of the girls assembling it. And then for evening snack, we're doing this thing called Doughboys, which I've never heard of before. They've done them several times in my ward. You take a crescent roll and you wrap it around kind of this stick thingy and you cook it over the fire.
Yes. They're called like woofums. Yeah, that's what they call them in my ward.
Oh, I've never heard them called woof. I've heard them called something else when I tried to Google them. Anyway, then you fill them like with pudding, whipped cream, Nutella, whatever you want. Tuesday morning, the girls will be awakening to cinnamon rolls, eggs, and bacon.
Yummy.
So I've baked my cinnamon rolls. We'll just reheat those in the Dutch ovens, put spicing on them. Then for lunch, we're going to do a croissant sandwich. Our treat will be a ginger molasses cookie. Dinner that night. Oh, here's the crazy thing we're doing for dinner. We're doing pizza. Now you may be wondering, how are we going to do pizza? We have a portable pizza oven and 2 of our adult children have a portable pizza oven. So we are taking all 3 of the portable pizza ovens up there, but we're not crazy enough to do pizzas from scratch. We have discovered that if you get the rising crust frozen pizza and you throw that in a portable pizza oven, with like a few extra toppings on it. Oh, it's delish and tastes like you did it from scratch.
Nice.
And then that night they're doing Dutch oven cobbler. Anyway, we're running long on time, so I won't go through the rest of it. But you kind of get the idea of
that sounds
what we're
delicious.
doing. And so that is my pro tip. Pre-make and freeze as much as you can.
I want to come to your girls' camp.
Here's my other pro tip. I didn't have a ton of freezer space. And I needed freezer space for camp. So I was like, I've got to locate freezer space. So I was like, who in my ward is going to have freezer space? So I targeted my empty nesters that formerly had big families because I thought, I bet they have huge garage freezers. Sure enough, I found one who had a nearly empty garage freezer. And I was like, well, guess what? It's not going to be empty for a couple of weeks. I'm filling her up. So that's my other pro tip. And
so when you take them up, are you going to put them in a freezer?
Yeah. So we'll
you have access to a freezer.
Well, yeah. What we have, my husband has really good coolers, like the really kind of expensive kind of cooler. So there are freezers up there, but I could easily fill up those freezers. Chances are we're probably just going to leave everything in the cooler because the coolers are so good that it's almost like pulling it out when it's cold. Plus my weather for next week.
Oh, right.
I have never been to girls' camp when it is less than 90 degrees. Well, that will change come Monday. 4 days of girls' camp. 3 of those days are predicted to be rain. 36 for a high in the morning on 2 of those days. Temperatures in the low 60s.
What are you guys going to do? Do you have a covered pavilion?
We do have a covered pavilion.
Well, that's good.
So my husband was talking about bringing up a propane heater to kind of keep the girls warm in the covered pavilion. Yeah, I am not packing. I do not have to worry about shorts because I will not be wearing shorts.
And your leaders don't have to worry about your girls wearing shorty shorts.
No, the leaders do not have to worry about the girls wearing shorty shorts. Mother Nature is taking care of that.
Problem is solved.
I will, however, be packing my wool socks. So anyway, I will return and report. Maybe I'll give a little update with Hannah when I interview Hannah.
Yes, we have
about my girls' camp experience.
We need to hear all about it. So, anyway, we hope you're all having a lovely summer full of treks, camps, FSYs, youth conferences, all the things.
All right, and now you have some pro tips.
Okay. All right. First news article this week. The Deseret News released an article saying Elder Holland is returning to his apostolic assignments. He's been out of commission for a while, which we knew.
Because he didn't show up at conference.
But I don't think we knew how serious. We knew he was having some health challenges, but this says that
nobody said why.
No, this says he underwent dialysis treatments for a kidney condition.
I know.
And I was thinking, we were discussing this before we started recording. Don't you... Once you go on dialysis, don't you not ever leave dialysis?
Well,
is that wrong? I don't really know.
I mean, to a certain extent it must be because I have a friend of mine and her husband got diagnosed with leukemia, and the leukemia made his kidneys go to kaput. And so he was on dialysis for a while, but then they tackled the leukemia. And once they got the leukemia tackled, now he's off dialysis.
Oh, okay. So
maybe there are some conditions, but yeah, I was always under the impression that if you were on dialysis, you probably weren't getting off.
Unless you're getting a new kidney, right?
Unless you're getting a new kidney. So
anyway, whatever it was, he is back. He said, he released a statement. He said, I am pleased to begin slowly returning to work. He said, Pat and I have been touched by the cards, notes, thoughts, and especially the prayers you've offered on our behalf. Anyway, and he just bore his testimony about how God watches over us, and he felt touched and that prayers were answered. And so we are happy to have him back.
Yes, happy to have him back. And let's wish him good health because Elder Holland is one of my faves.
Yeah.
So, all right. Our next story is a Ken Jennings story. As you know, he was very successful on Jeopardy.
I feel like Ken Jennings pops up in our stories about every 3 months.
He really does. He has a new book out, and his new book is titled 100 Places to See After You Die, which is kind of an odd title for a book. And what he does in this book is he explores all different religions and cultures and what they believe about the afterlife, saying, hey, when you get to the afterlife, go check out this one and see if that's what this is about and whatnot. So it's it's very trivia oriented to a certain extent, or fact based, I should say, maybe not trivia, but fact based to a certain extent, because he, like I said, he talks about all sorts of different cultures and religions and what they believe and that sort of thing.
That sounds interesting.
It does. So there was an interview that he did with the New Yorker, and let me tell you, it was a huge interview. The thing goes on and on and on. And some of the highlights for his interview were some of the things that he talks about in his book. And then they asked him a little bit about hosting. And they asked him, I thought this was interesting, how difficult? And he said, it's the speed of it. It's hard to overstate how fast it moves and the mechanic of what the host has to do 61 times a show. Read the clue flawlessly, call on the right contestant, adjudicate their responses correctly, and then it all repeats.
I never thought about that.
I never thought about that too. And so I thought that that was kind of an interesting viewpoint. Anyway, so it's kind of an interesting article. If you're a Ken Jennings fan, go find it and read it.
Okay. All right. Next article came out by the Church News. This was a fun little piece. It's about two twin brothers who are newly called bishops in the Atlanta area. So their names are Raphael and Sebastian Van Dyke. They are twins. They have kids the same age. They both have one grandchildren. They've followed similar career paths. They're both in like IT, and they've always lived within a short drive of each other. Like they have Sunday dinners together frequently. And
they are identical twins.
Yes.
We ought to mention that.
Yes.
Part of one of the reasons probably why they're so close.
And then in February, Sebastian Van Dyke got called as bishop of his Atlanta ward in the Atlanta, Georgia stake. 3 weeks later, his brother Raphael was sustained as bishop of the Woodstock ward in the Marietta, Georgia stake. So anyway, it was a really cute article. It has their picture. They just talked about how it's fun to do it together, which I can totally imagine because we've had the same Relief Society calling at the same time before, and it's amazing because we can
talk to each other,
bounce ideas off each other. So anyway, but it does say they did share a little bit of like the differences in their congregation.
Their demographics of their ward
their demographics are
huge.
Different. So even though they're going to be able to bounce ideas, they definitely are going to have their own individual experiences. The brother that's in Atlanta, his ward is about 70% Black and like tons of converts in his ward that converted when they were adults. The other brother that lives north of Atlanta, Marietta, his ward is predominantly Caucasian. But they've been waiting. It said they've all been waiting. This is a big milestone to have a black bishop in that ward. And so they were kind of, celebrating. But he also said there's a lot of diverse backgrounds there, which I think you get a lot of diverse backgrounds in any ward west of or east of the Mississippi.
Exactly. So outside of the Mormon belt.
Anyway, I just loved it. It was a really cute article. They just talked about how they themselves were converts when they were young. I think it said high school, right?
They were 14 or 15. They were teenagers.
And they both converted to the church together. So they've just kind of followed this whole path together. And it was a cool article.
I thought it was a very cool article. My favorite part was when after the first one got called, he was like, I don't know if I can do this calling. And then when his brother got called, he was like, oh yeah, I can do this calling. I got my bro here.
I know. I think that's so cute.
I liked that. So, all right. Our next story is a pageant story because I love a good pageant.
We can't resist a pageant story.
So this is Miss Lehigh Teen Pageant. And as you can imagine, I suspect probably most, if not all the girls competing are probably members of the church. Probably. But there was a particular girl and she won it, and her name was Amanda Giraldi, Giraldi, I think is how it's pronounced. So she's 17. She won the Lehigh's Teen Pageant. And so she's Miss Lehigh Teen,
which then you get to go to Miss Teen Utah, right?
Miss Teen Utah. Okay. And this is part of the Miss America pageant system. There's the Miss USA pageant system and there's the Miss America pageant system. This is part of the Miss America pageant system. And Amanda is a member of the church. I did some digging, and she is a member of the church. So she wins the crown on Saturday nights. And then Tuesday afternoon, here comes a knock at her door. And the pageant officials show up at her door in Lehigh. And they say, there's a little clerical error. You actually didn't win. And she's like, what? So apparently, when the contracts were sent out, the contract said you had to be born between 2005 and 2010 to compete in the teen pageant. Well, she was born, or that's the contract said between 2005 and 2010. She was born in 2005. Well, after they did the contracts, National Miss America changed their requirements to 2006. And nobody caught this.
You can't do that.
I know. Nobody caught this prior to the
Well,
pageant.
she can't be the only one that has had this problem.
No,
right?
The article does say that others ran into this problem. So they told her, they said, well, we're going to have to take your title back, and you can't compete at the state level. We'll let you keep your $1,000 scholarship, but yeah, you have to give us everything back.
She was mad.
She was mad.
And like she went to the media.
Oh, yeah. She went to the media and she's like, this is not my fault. This is a total clerical error on their part. And they do admit it was a clerical error on their part. They said, well, why don't we give you a title of Miss Lehigh City teen?
They tried to give her an alternate title.
She even said, hey, fine, send the first runner up to the state pageant, but let me be the representative for the year and go around and do all the things within my city that get done. And they were like, no, we cannot have that. And so she was really mad. She's like, I'm never competing in a pageant again. Well, somebody came to their senses. Either that or their lawyer said, if you send a contract out that says 2005, you kind of don't get to change that. So you probably ought to honor that. So then they went back and knocked on her door again, and they were like, JK, you do get to keep the title. So it does have a happy ending. She does get to keep the title. She does say, yeah, I'm not so certain I want to participate in pageants again, but this will be fine. So good for Amanda. Glad they got that all straightened out. It reminded me, do you ever remember seeing that episode of Designing Women where Suzanne Sugarbaker?
Yes, I love that episode.
She's Miss World Georgia, 1975. And like 10 years later, they discover a clerical error and they have to take her crown away. And she is just like, no.
Freaks the freak out.
She freaks the freak out. I don't believe it. I earned it. And then when they get to the thing, they discover that the real girl who won was sleeping with the judge. So it reminded me very much of that episode of Designing Women.
That's so funny. I wonder what happened to the poor runner-up. She got the same knock on her door. Guess what? You're the girl. And then like 2 days later, guess what? You're not.
I know. Yeah, we haven't seen any media coverage from the poor runner-up.
Oh, man. Okay, next article. This was a quick little blurb on the Salt Lake Tribune, actually, in their Mormon land section. They kind of gave some new statistics that are out. A blogger, I should have written down his name. I can't remember his name.
Okay.
That keeps tabs on these things, has put out a list for the past year on which states in the United States gained members and lost members, gained wards and lost wards.
Okay.
So the big loser is California.
Ooh.
They are down 55 congregations in the past year. Like they lost 55 wards and branches.
Wow.
Past year. That seems like a lot.
Yeah, it does. It kind of makes me wonder because I know that they've been steadily declining too. Right. I bet there's a lot of wards that only have one ward in their building. They don't have to share the building.
Yeah.
That has pluses and minuses.
That's true. You get that sweet 10:30 time.
But it also means you have to clean every week.
That's true. That's true. I didn't think about that. The second runner-up for losses was state of Washington. They are also down, I think it said 35 wards.
Oh, okay.
And then the next up was state of Arizona. They're down 10 wards. Winners were Utah, who added 37 wards.
Okay.
Texas added 7, and Michigan added 3. And then
I can't believe there's nothing in there about Idaho.
I know. They did say Idaho added a stake, but they didn't add a ward. So I'm guessing that's just this stake is too big. We're splitting it into 2, making a new stake.
Or they had a couple of stakes that were too big.
Yeah.
And they divided them into thirds.
So they also had a list of stakes that were added, and there were several countries on there besides a few states, and also several countries that added stakes. Anyway, interesting list.
Very interesting.
It's always fun to see numbers and statistics.
Yes, it is. So speaking of statistics, you have more statistics for us.
We have more statistics. Okay. This was on Public Square, which is a blog, right?
Yes.
This article was entitled Latter-day Saint Enigma, Their Unexpected Troop Abuse Rates. This article kind of did a breakdown because this spring, the Boy Scouts of America, cleared their final whatever they had to do with filing bankruptcy and settling all these settlements. So the plan that was approved by the court was that they are going to pay $2.4 billion in settlements. And that will come from their insurers, all the local councils, and some of their sponsoring organizations, which would be the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It is the largest sexual abuse compensation fund ever.
Wow.
But this article was interesting. It kind of did a breakdown of the parties who are contributing to this fund and trying to figure out okay, what percentage of actual Boy Scouts did they have and what percentage of abuse that we have on record was theirs.
Yes.
So it said our church, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, will contribute $250 million, which is 10% of the fund.
Of change.
It's a chunk of change. It's 10% of the fund. It says some critics are claiming this is unfair because Boy Scouts of America was made up of 20 to 30% of their troops were Latter-day Saint troops. So some will say, shouldn't the church contribute 20 to 30% of the fund? This guy says not so fast. They've somehow analyzed the statistics and what they have on their files and what the Boy Scouts had on their files. I don't know how he admits the numbers are. It's a little bit. It's hard.
It's fuzzy
because they kept those numbers hidden for years and years, and I think a lot of them now are public records. But they had to go through files and
So they had 5,000 files that were an option for them to take a look at.
So they only were analyzing.
They analyzed, I think they said 10%.
10% of them.
Yes.
Yeah.
So they randomly drew 500 of the 5,000 files. Mm-hmm. And then they went through those files to determine if they could determine from those files any religious affiliation. And they either did that by sponsoring troop or if the individual said, yes, I'm a member of the church.
Right. So after they did that, they were able to take from this sample the fact that they believe that the proportion of Latter-day Saint cases of abuse was lower. They think their estimate is 5%.
Yes.
So according to that, they think the church is being very, very generous. They're paying 10% of the fund, if only 5%. Anyway, this article just kind of left me feeling kind of icky. And they did, I will say the author disclaimed several times in this article, he disclaimed any amount of abuse is too much. One is too much. It's all too much. We shouldn't be. But at the same time, I don't know. It just left me feeling icky to break down the numbers and be we're paying don't come after us. We're paying more than our share. Yeah. I get it. I get the desire to defend the church is, doing our part, and we're trying to do our part. We're trying to make it right, which I appreciate, but I don't know, just the breaking it down of it and kind of the defensiveness of it.
See, and I didn't see it that way at all.
It felt kind of icky to me. I
didn't see it as defensive at all. I thought it was fascinating that, again, we made up 20 to 30% of the troops. We have no idea how they arrived at the idea of, $250 million. But I guess what I found so fascinating is if you just read the media stories, over and over and over again, you hear these stories about LDS scout leaders abusing kids. And so there was a part of me that was surprised that statistically they thought it was only about 5%. But then there was another part of me that wasn't, because I was if you listen to the media, things are always blown out of statistical proportion to begin with anyway. So,
and there's not one other group as big as our group to put that on.
Yes.
There's lots of other churches involved, but they're not as central as ours. But I don't know. It was interesting, and they did point out, and I did think this was interesting. They're just kind of speculating about why that number would be lower for us than others, and part of that speculation was that ours are callings versus other troops. You volunteer, you raise your hand and say, "I will." So it's more prime for someone who is a pedophile to volunteer and slide in there, versus in the church, you have to wait until you get called. You don't usually walk in and say, "I want to be with the Boy Scouts," although I'm sure that happens.
I'm sure that happened too.
Anyway, that was just their speculation as to why. Anyway, the numbers were interesting. I don't know. It felt weird to me to be talking about, like, are we paying our fair share? We are paying our fair share, but also these are people's lives.
I know.
It's just, the whole topic is always icky. Every time we have a Boy Scout abuse story, it just,
and maybe it is just the cold-hearted lawyer in me that I'm like, it's just numbers.
Right. That's true.
Numbers.
That's true. All right. What do we have next?
Okay. Next, we have a story about Battlestar Galactica from a website called TV Over Mind. Probably a lot of our listeners may not remember the original Battlestar Galactica. It debuted in 1979. So the year you were born, Battlestar Galactica.
Never, ever watched that show. Not a minute of that show in my life have I ever
not
watched.
Even in the reruns?
No.
Oh, girl. I've owned the series. I need to bring it over to you.
Are you serious?
I'm totally serious.
I had no idea you were a Battlestar Galactica
Your
fan.
kids would love it. Like, Lauren's watched it. She's loved it. My daughter, Lauren.
I had no idea.
You did not know I was a Battlestar Galactica fan? No. You know, I don't actually remember really watching it when it aired on network TV. When I watched it there was one summer, and it must have been a summer when I was, in junior high, that they showed it in reruns because they had canceled it by then. And so every day they had a new episode in reruns, and it was on at like 3 or 4 in the afternoon. And every day, I don't know how I got away with it because our mom was a TV Nazi. I sat and watched it, and it has so many underlying church themes. And that's what this article is about. Now, the rumor on the street for years and years was the producer, Glenn A. Larson, was a Mormon or a former Mormon, which is how it got the church themes. But according to this article, the creator is a gentleman by the name of Ronald D. Moore, and that he was the one who drew from his Mormon upbringing in creating this. So I don't know.
So maybe there were multiple members of the church that were involved.
I don't know if the whole Glenn A. Larson is a Mormon thing is true, or if it's one of those Mormon myths. But anyway, there was a gentleman named Ronald D. Moore who drew from his own upbringing. So the premises of the show is these people are on a planet called Kobol, as opposed to Kolab.
Oh, Kolab.
Kolab. So they're not on Kolab because we own Kolab, but they're on Kobol.
Okay.
And their planet is getting destroyed. And so they have to everybody has to get on their spaceships, and they're out on this journey to find Earth. They have heard about one of their distant colonies who left years and years ago to go find Earth. And so they're on this journey in space to go find their long lost relatives on Earth.
Okay.
They have a council of the 12 that is sometimes referred to as a quorum of the 12.
Okay.
Their marriages are sealings.
Really?
Yes. And in one episode, there is a quote. See if you recognize this quote. As you are now, we once were. As we are now, you may become.
Oh.
Now, if that's not the most Mormon thing you've ever heard.
Wow.
Anyway, and so then they've got evil characters, and there's a whole battle for humanity's soul. Anyway, so this article just kind of touched on some of the tie-ins with Battlestar Galactica.
Interesting.
I should bring it over because I don't know, maybe your kids would get into it for the summer. I have to tell you, your 5-year-old boy would love it. Oh. They got spaceships flying around and gun battles, and it's very G-rated. So, I mean,
maybe we should be cosplaying Battlestar Galactica instead of cosplaying Handcart Family. Just, switch it up a little next year.
Don't give me any ideas to campaign for. All right. So our next one, there is a designer who just got a contract with Dillard's, and she is a member of the church. So let me pull this one up. Her name is the title of the article in the Deseret News is Latter-day Saint designer combines faith and fashion in her Dillard's collection. Her name is Jennifer Sumko. And so she has always been creative, and she decided, first of all, she got into photography, and then she got into designing and sewing, and finally
home decor stuff.
And so finally she was able to, she has a pretty good following on Instagram, about 80,000 followers on Instagram. And she created this dress line, which I'll let you describe what you call her dress line.
Oh, I call it Pioneer Chic.
Yes. It's got lots of pioneer style fabrics and poofy sleeves and ruffles. I think Pioneer Chic is a very good way to describe it. But that's kind of having a moment, although they call it Coastal Grandma this summer.
Oh, okay.
Not Pioneer Chic. Okay. They're calling it Coastal
Grandma.
Coastal Grandmother.
Not the same
premises. Anyway, so she has a 35-piece collection, including dresses, shoes, swimsuits, and more that have landed at Dillard's. She uses bright garden-inspired patterns and colors to invoke feelings of happiness and whimsy. So,
all right.
Good for her.
We love to hear that.
We do.
Okay. This next story, this is another sewing story about Latter-day Saints. So this woman, this is really sweet. Her name is Mary Stevens. She is from Anaconda, Montana. She has sewn over 1,400 dresses for children in need. This is just like kind of her pet project she took on. They were doing a service project in her ward. She saw an article online that showed you how to turn a pillowcase into dresses. They did them in her ward. And after that, she just loved it so much. She kept going. She just buys like pillowcases and sheets and like elastic and ribbon and sews these cute little dresses. And then they send them overseas. They said her dresses have been to Africa, India, Ecuador, and Haiti. She said that she felt like the Lord always took care of her. She always ran into people who were going out of the country and was able to send dresses with them to get to these other countries and kids in need. Anyway, it was a sweet story.
It was in the church news. So if you want to see her dresses, she's got pictures of them on the story that's on the church news website.
Very sweet.
So, okay. The next one is, we don't have a lot of hard news this week. Most of our stuff is kind of fluffy this week, but that's good.
We do have a sad one.
Oh, we do have a sad one, but let's talk about the happy one and then we'll talk about the sad one. So, BYU, their track and field team, they have a gentleman on there by the name of Kenneth Rooks, and he is BYU's first male individual to win a national championship in 4 years when he pulled away from Montana State's Duncan Hamilton in the final lap of the steeplechase. So he won the steeplechase at the NCAA Outdoor Track and Field Championships. He's a junior from Walla Walla. And it took him 8 hours and 26 minutes to do the steeplechase. They do all I can't remember exactly what the steeplechase involves, but they're physical for a really long time, doing runs and hurdles and whatnot. The race was held in Austin, Texas. And so it's very humid in Austin. And so people were asking him, how did you deal with the humidity? I mean, you're from a climate that's very dry. Well, Brother Rooks served a mission in Uganda. And he said, 2 years in Uganda really helped me learn how to deal with humidity.
Wow.
Because you could presume he was in garments and a shirt and a tie and probably some dress pants.
Probably walking all over.
So, in running shorts, he's probably like, ooh, this is real cool and comfy.
Yeah.
Anyway, so congratulations to him. And the other thing, too, and I remember that we covered this. So with Rook's title, BYU is the first school in NCAA division history to win back-to-back men and women's steeplechase titles. Last year, Courtney Waymant, she won the women's individual steeplechase title. And I remember,
that's so cool.
I remember covering that story. We
year,
talked about her. So she was pretty impressive. So
that's exciting.
Good for Kenneth Rooks.
Yeah.
All right. So my next story that's kind of sad, the last 2 months we've talked about these members who have died and unfortunately died at the hands of their spouse. Well, we have another member who died, but he did not pass away at the hand of his spouse. It's a super sad story. He is from Kansas. He's a dad of 13. They were on a rafting trip in Colorado. So it was him and his kids and their youth group. He used to live in Colorado. And so they decided for, again, a youth summer activity, just like we've been talking about, to go ride the rapids on this river. So he'd been on this river many times, was super familiar with this river. But with the amount of water that we had this year, the river was just running much faster than it had ever run before. And the raft he was in capsized. And when it did, he had kids in it. Not only, well, I don't know if they were kids other than his kids, but he had at least a couple of his kids in it, including one of his daughters. And so he was able to get them to safety. But he took on so much water that even though he made it to shore, they were unable to save him and he passed away. And so,
so sad.
It's very, very, very sad. So
sad.
Our hearts go out to Brother Harker's family, dealing with a lot. And the ward too, because presumably if this was a church thing, it was probably his ward that was there, and that would be kind of hard. So, all right. Should we end on a happier note?
Yes, we will end on a happier note. Leading into Father's Day.
Yes, it is.
You have a Hannah article.
It is Father's Day this weekend. And so we're going to end with an article by Hannah Syriac. So she wrote this article. It's on the Deseret News. It says, "Dad jokes are scientifically shown to benefit children." Here's Utah's favorite one. And so she starts off with, "The bank keeps calling me to give me compliments. They say I have an outstanding balance." That's
Utah's favorite dad joke.
That's not Utah's favorite dad joke. That was just her lead off. And she says, roll eyes, dad jokes and how cliche they are. But he said that she did say that a university researcher found that dad jokes actually may help children develop stamina to endure embarrassment and develop into adults who are comfortable with being themselves.
Well, it is my husband's mission in life to embarrass our kids.
So he's right on track.
He's doing his job.
So the Utah dad joke is actually more of a saying. So
okay, what's that?
It is, the favorite phrase or pun is, "What's the plan, Stan?"
What's the plan, Stan? Is that a thing they say a lot in Utah?
I mean, I've said that a lot.
What's the plan,
What's
Stan?
the plan, Stan? So anyway, and then then her article has a number of dad jokes you can use, like, "Why did the Oreo go to the dentist? It lost its filling." So anyway, so it's kind of a cute article and honoring Father's Day. And so
that's funny.
Anyway, that ends it for our news stories. Now, normally we would be heading into our segment of Mormons behaving badly. But I have to tell you, I don't have any Mormons behaving badly this month.
Mormons have been good this month.
Mormons have been good this month.
I feel like this is only the second time this has ever happened.
I know. It's very rare that
how many years we've done this? 6 years?
Yeah. I mean,
it's very rare, but we're so proud of you. We're so proud of all the good people being good this month.
We've decided they're too busy getting their kids on youth.
They're too busy packing for treks and
camps and other activities to behave badly.
So we love it. We hope it's a streak.
Exactly.
We hope in July we also have no Mormons behaving badly.
But I'm not holding my breath.
All right.
Should we do favorite things?
Sure. Okay. We got to share our favorite things. It's tradition. We just like to do it. Okay. My favorite thing this month is a movie out in theaters.
Okay.
It is Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. Based on the classic Judy Blume book.
Oh, yes.
So it was the cutest movie.
You've seen it?
Yes. I went with my girlfriends a couple weeks ago. Like, we kind of went for school's out. Let's go see a movie to celebrate.
You did not tell me this.
I should have invited you. It was really cute.
Oh.
So cute. I'm going to show it to my girls when it comes out on video. Lots of period talk, lots of puberty talk.
Did it bring back teenage angst and memories?
Yes, definitely. Lots of good laughs. The girl that played Margaret was so good. She was just such a good actress,
Aww.
Child actress. So it was very cute.
Okay.
Highly recommend.
Well, mine is a podcast, but I have to tell you how I got to this podcast. Okay. So sometime about a week ago, I'm surfing Facebook because I kind of like to do that for a few minutes when I wake up in the morning, kind of gets my brain going. And you know how Facebook will say, oh, hey, we suggest this page for you, you know, kind of based on your interests and stuff. So they suggested this page called the Pop Culture Preservation Society. So I started looking at it. It is all for Gen Xers, for kids who grew up in the 70s.
Okay.
And so it has so much fun stuff on there. So they have a really good Facebook page that has all sorts of fun stuff on it, but they also have a podcast. And so on their podcast, they said, or on their Facebook page, they were talking about how they'd interviewed Sean Cassidy. Well, Sean Cassidy was my teenage heartthrob. He was the first record I ever bought.
I remember seeing your records of Sean Cassidy.
I was obsessed. So, of course, I had to listen to the Sean Cassidy podcast. That's not my favorite podcast. In the midst of the Sean Cassidy podcast, when they're I don't know what they were introing in the beginning or the end or whatnot, they talked about a Brady Bunch podcast.
Oh.
The Brady Bunch podcast. So this is the one that is my favorite things. Favorite thing is called The Real Brady Bros.
The Real Brady Bros. Okay.
And it is done by Barry Williams, who played Greg.
Okay.
And Christopher Knight, who played Peter.
Oh, okay.
And so what they do is every episode is about an hour. And they take one episode from the series. And they don't go in order. They just kind of pick and choose whatever they want. And they break down that episode. Like they break down the dialogue, they break down what was going on behind the scenes, what they remember, impressions. And so they're looking at it and watching it now, you know, 50 years later from when they did it with kind of a fresh perspective and a fresh set of eyes. And it is so good.
Okay, that sounds fun. I
really love it. I knew you would. I was like, oh, Ariane's going to die when I tell her this.
Brady Bunch was my rerun show that I watched.
Well, it was everybody's rerun show. It's mine too. Anyway,
my kids have started watching it some too. I mean, they did several years ago, and then they took a break and they've revisited it lately, and I love it.
I do too. So anyway, there is another podcast called The Brady Bros. That is not the right one. It is The Real Brady Bros.
The Real Brady Bros. Okay.
The Real Brady Bros.
Good to know. Someone tried to imitate them.
Yes.
Someone took the name before they could get the name.
I have no idea which came first.
The Real Brady Bros.
But The Real Brady Bros is the one that has Barry Williams and Christopher Knight.
Okay, I'm going to listen. That sounds delightful.
All right. Well, I think that about wraps it up for us tonight, but I am going to throw a little teaser carrot out there. So for our Patreon subscribers, we are doing what is called a Patreon pop-up. And so we do some extra stuff that we throw in that is only available to Patreon subscribers. And so once we finish this tonight, we are going to go down the LGBTQ rabbit hole with our Patreon pop-up because there's a couple of LGBTQ stories in the news this month. So if you are interested in that, become a Patreon subscriber for $3 a month and help us keep the lights on and get your extra content.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. And again, if you have any questions or comments, you can reach out at contact@thisweekinmormons.com. You can find us on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram.
Thanks for listening.